They say power blinds. But what happens when power makes a father see enemies where there is only love? The castle towers still echoed with cries that night. Outside, the wind cut like a blade, and within the walls, royal blood was spilled, not for betrayal, but for fear. Fear of losing the throne, fear of being forgotten, fear of his own children. It was the 16th century. The Russian Empire was expanding, and upon the throne of Moscow sat Ivan IV, later known as Ivan the Terrible. His name would echo through the ages, marked by wars, tortures, and a fury that felt almost divine. A man who believed himself chosen by God, yet haunted by the demons of his own mind. The empire lived in tension. Nobles conspired, foreign enemies surrounded the borders, and the fear of treason consumed the Tsar's heart. Every glance, every whisper in the halls of the Kremlin seemed to hide a plot against him. And to Ivan, the greatest threat could come from within his very own blood. Russia, forged by cold and war, watched its ruler waver between piety and madness. He prayed with devotion, and in the next instant ordered mass executions. The people feared him, the nobles despised him, and his sons learned to love him in silence. But Ivan had not been born a monster. As a boy, he had seen his own mother poisoned, his power stolen, his trust destroyed. He grew up surrounded by betrayal and death. The child who once wanted to be loved became the man who could only fear. When he ascended the throne, he swore that no one would ever take it from him. He created a personal guard, the dreaded Oprichnina, that spread terror across all of Russia. Entire villages burned, families vanished, and the land itself seemed to tremble. Every head that fell was a reminder of his power, and a desperate attempt to silence his paranoia. Behind the golden walls of the Kremlin, the Tsar lived in isolation. The laughter of his sons echoed down the corridors, but Ivan's eyes grew colder with each passing day. He saw in them not the continuation of his bloodline, but the seeds of his downfall. The whispers of madness grew louder. They're waiting for your weakness, Ivan. They want your crown. His eldest son, Ivan Ivanovich, was everything his father no longer was: fair, kind, and loved by the people. Soldiers respected him, advisors trusted him, and that alone was enough to ignite the flame of jealousy within the Tsar. The son became a mirror reflecting everything the father had lost. Arguments between them became constant. The young prince dared to question his father's cruelty, his wars, his tyranny. But Ivan saw only rebellion. Every word from his son felt like defiance. Every act of compassion, an act of betrayal. Legend says the Tsar spent his nights pacing through stone corridors, speaking to shadows, hearing voices that warned him of treason. "They want my throne," he would whisper to the dark, not realizing that the darkness had already taken him. It was a winter night. The air was heavy, the silence broken only by the crackle of fire in the torches. The prince entered his father's chamber to argue once more about Russia's fate. Words turned to shouts, and shouts to steel and blood. In a blinding moment of rage, the Tsar struck his own son with the golden scepter. The sound was sharp and final. The prince collapsed, bleeding in the arms of the man who had given him life. The king screamed, begged God for mercy, tried to stop the bleeding, but it was already too late. The court fell into horror. Servants wept in silence. When the people learned of it, they cursed the Tsar's name. And the throne, stained with the heir's blood, never shone the same way again. It was as if even the winter itself recoiled at the horror that had unfolded. In the days that followed, Ivan refused to eat, to rule, to live. He wandered the palace pale and broken, holding the body of his son and whispering fragmented prayers. "Forgive me, my son. Forgive me," he muttered as the cold crept through the castle halls. But forgiveness never came. Not from heaven, not from his people, not from himself. The crime became part of the crown, a permanent scar on the symbol of Russian power. The man who was once feared by all became a prisoner of his own guilt. Without a worthy heir, the empire crumbled. Wars erupted, and the great Rurik dynasty ended in sorrow and ruin. Ivan's throne grew heavier, so heavy that no ruler since could bear it without blood on his hands. Years later, the Tsar died alone, haunted by the voices that never left him. They say that in his final moments, he saw his son's face before him, and he wept, not as a ruler, but as a father shattered by his own fear. Some whisper that his spirit still roams the corridors of the Kremlin, that on certain winter nights, one can hear slow footsteps and the echo of a man begging for forgiveness that will never come. What drives a man to destroy what he loves most? What turns a father into an executioner? And a throne into a prison? Power does not merely corrupt, it consumes until nothing remains but the shadow of what was once human. And as the wind still howls over the towers of Moscow, an old lesson lingers in the air. No empire is eternal, no king is invincible, and sometimes the greatest enemy of a throne is the one who sits upon it. This was Shadows of Royalty, where the past still bleeds on the walls of power. Thank you for watching. If you were captivated by this story, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the darkest corners of history.